Good life. Physics suggests to us that emptiness is an important part of our existence. The key is to understand it and achieve balance. We are made up of molecules, which are made up of atoms, which are made up of nuclei and electrons. Nuclei are made up of protons and neutrons, and protons and neutrons are made up of quarks and gluons. Are there any other possibilities? At every level of matter there is emptiness. The emptiness around the nuclei of atoms allows us to calculate that we are made up of 99.9999% empty space, and only 0.0001% is our all atoms volume in our body space. We all like energy clouds and all around us. Let's take a moment to just feel physics of our world and immerse ourselves in the world of our imagination. Let's try to visualize how the universe came to be. If you are interested in understanding what's happening around us, it's important to disconnect from the outside world and instead focus on yourself, your thoughts, and activate your imagination. Within each of us is our own personal universe of thoughts and actions. This is a brief history of my understanding of universe based on my thoughts and actions. It's fascinating to talk about the universe, the space around us, the energy inside of us. There is so much to explore. As we delve into the topic, we'll see a model of the interaction between protons and neutrons, their structure, and why neutrons are neutral, why protons have a positive charge. We'll see the positron in the proton and the absence of any charge in the neutron, and understand the reason for the extremely strong force of interaction between the components of proton and neutron. So let's relax and visualize what's happening. Light. How does light move through the space around us? Take a look at the structure of this beam of light, which seems to be projected into space from the bottom of a conical flask. We can see how the light rays merge in layers of air, with emptiness between the layers of the flame. I'm using my phone to capture the dispersion of light from a flashlight, which is made possible by the optical properties of water in a conical flask at a certain angle. But what does the light beam look like inside? Will it be empty or full of light? Right now we can see how the light rays are being spread out. As I move the camera left and right, we see different two-dimensional planes, which together represent the entire light beam from the flashlight. And we can see the volumetric light. By observing the behavior of light at a certain angle, due to the refraction of light by the water and glass of the flask, and after multiple modifications, we can see the structure of this light beam in different two-dimensional planes that exist in layers in three-dimensional space. Our eyes have a two-dimensional perception of space, giving us many flat images, while our brain provides us with a volumetric image with the necessary accents by focusing on the object of interest. We have a solution in a flask containing a substance that at a certain angle catches the light from a flashlight on the substance on the flask in the solution near the surface. The surface of the solution is just a plane in which light, upon reaching the flask, bends around the roundest shapes of the substance on the glass, just in the plane of the surface of the solution. A thin layer of the solution on the surface catches the light, and further refraction occurs through the glass at the edge of the flask. The light emerges as it forms the bottom up from the spherical bottom of the flask. Light cannot pass through the opaque substance in the plane of the surface. In real time, we obtain the appearance of the substance at the bottom of the flask. The light illuminated the contours of the substance. Light rays reflect off the surface of the substance and refract at a certain angle, and we see this as the substance as the bottom of the flask. By the way, we do not see the layer of glass below the substance, so the substance and the solution seem to float in the air. There are no special effects here. It is all about the movement of light and the workings of our eyes, how they perceive and form a picture of reality for us. The observed effect can be called a projection of an object in a volume of a solution. However, no projection devices are used. It's all due to the physics of processes in the universe. Physics tell us that light moves in two-dimensional planes, and our eyes only understand this type of light physics. Our eyes form images only in these planes, and in childhood our brain learns to assemble these visible planes and understand the whole space in which we exist. You can conduct a simple observation of how your eyes work. Place a ring on a surface with pattern and start focusing your gaze on areas with the ring. You will notice that some things are clearly visible in focus while others are blurry, out of focus. In the first case, we clearly see the area around the ring in focus, while the ring itself and the surface inside it are blurry. In the second case, we clearly see the area inside the ring in focus, while the ring itself and the surface outside of it are blurry. In the third case, we see the ring itself in focus, while the surface inside and outside the ring are blurry. Modern video cameras capture all surface in focus. To our brain, it is important to see blurriness and focus. These give us an idea of the distance and sequence of the arrangement of objects. Our eyes are an incredibly beautiful tool for exploring the universe. Now let's imagine in our mind that we are on a beautiful beach by the sea. We have gone into the water to a depth of more than 3 meters, dived underwater, and stayed in the thickness of the water. There we closed our eyes and did a few somersaults to purposely lose our orientation in space. While our eyes are closed, we do not know where the top surface is, where the bottom is. While our eyes are closed, we are kind of weightless. Our brain cannot determine the direction of movement. Feel this state. With our eyes closed, we can move in any direction, but we don't know where we are going. We don't feel gravity, and without light, we don't know where up and down are. This weightlessness is just a state in space. You are a part of the universe. With these feelings of weightlessness, let's try to feel what space means to us. Can we touch it? Our universe is supersymmetric, and the balance between everything in it is important. The basis for the existence of the universe is balance and action, the preservation of maximum symmetry in movement. Everything in the universe is in balance, equilibrium. Any action causes a response. This gives a balance. The action consists of combination of forces. Each force has only one direction, the force vector. Space, infinite, not elastic. When tension or action occurs in space, it begins to sequentially transfer it across space from the starting point. Space is easily from new dimensions when an action occurs. As example, transitions between 2-dimension to 3-dimension state of a group of basic particles in space. Space is close to everything in the universe, but it is not possible to interact with it. He loves the variability of events and allows you to create other spaces and dimensions in it, as well as all sorts of their combinations. The essence of space is everywhere and always, but not to interfere with everything that happens in it. Where does all the energy in the universe come from? Space endlessly curves around us. It's the source of energy and our existence. We cannot and will never be able to physically touch space, but we are aware of its existence. This is what constitutes touch and awareness, and that is enough to begin to approach it and see its reaction to our actions. Let's imagine that in empty space an event occurred in the distance, and from that event a wave of motion appeared in space. Let's represent this event in one-dimensional space in which an object appeared that acts on space. In one-dimensional space it is difficult for us to perceive what is happening. And thanks to the supersymmetry of space, we can move to a two-dimensional space, where the concept of right-left appears. The universe strives to balance everything, and based on this, we consider that processes are possible in a two-dimensional space. Space is not flexible and wants to remove any tension within it. Let's imagine this process as the movement of tension within space further away from the center of its origin. Let's consider the behavior of liquids in a vacuum, which takes the shape of a sphere as the most symmetrical and stable form. In two dimensions, the same process occurs, but with the formation of a circle. In fact, this is a two-dimensional slice of a sphere from the world of three-dimensional objects. From what I've read and analyzed in physics, I became interested in how many different interpretations there are for the Planck length. It turns out that we can move an object by a minimum distance of 1.6 multiplied by 10 to the power of minus 35 meters. That is, we cannot observe movement over smaller distances, as processes related of the curvature of space occur at smaller distances. Let's consider the Planck constant as the length that reflects the extent of the tension in space between space cells. An empty infinite space without any actions within it is in a state of zero-dimensional, the original dimension. Then the length of the space cell can be considered zero or almost zero to the extent that is possible to approximate this to zero. In such a scenario, the space forms a structure that resembles a capacitor. There's a zone with an increased tension, roughly the red zone at the top, which is directed towards a zone with reduced tension. These zones are connected by interactions in space, but the outer part of the space is separated from the inner part, the action space. We can calculate the size of this area, which formed as a result of an event in the form of an action on space, using mathematical formulas related to a circle. The diameter of this area is 10 to the power of minus 35 meters, and I believe it's correct to consider this area as a wave object, that is, as a vibrating wave. This object also can be considered as an elementary particle of our energy space, which reflects the interaction between space and action space, which is the basis of the emergence of energy, light. I suggest calling this particle p vector x, or abbreviated as px. In this scenario, a particle is formed in space that has an energy approximately equal to all the energy contained in matter on Earth multiplied by 20. Particle is created in a region with zones of increased and reduced tension, which led to an avalanche-like formation of new particles. This process is unstoppable, and our universe is expanding every moment. At a distance of Planck length in space, the centers of neighboring Pivx particles are located to the right and left. These particles have a very strong connection up and down the chain, while the connections left and right can vibrate. When these particles vibrate, they interact weakly, but the interactions are the basis for the appearance of energy. The strong and weak interactions of many such capacitor particles lead to the emergence of an energy field. The high energy vibrations of these particles can be viewed as vibrations of string made of these particles. Vibrations with a frequency higher than 10 to the power of 43 Hz lead to interesting variations. One of the most interesting variations occurs when the strings begin to vibrate very strongly, and in the process the string becomes similar to springs and spirals. At a certain moment, due to the high voltage that arises in the string made of particles during vibration, the chains can intersect with neighboring strings, which becomes the basis for the appearance of three-dimensional objects. The simplest such objects are chains of Pivx particles closed in a loop. Thus metastable simple cycles are formed, as well as cycles in the form of Möbius strips. I would really like to show the beauty of this process of particle formation as I see it, but I need more opportunities for that. The most important thing is that this process can be demonstrated visually in our world, at our material level. In order to better understand a physical process, it is desirable to see it visually. My version is to show how I see the process of the formation of protons and neutrons from the perspective of space involving Pivx particles and the manifestation of the magnetic fields acting in them. I was able to implement this using a flat surface in the form of a Möbius strip made of paper and magnets intertwined into Möbius strips. Let's move to the 3D life world. Strings consist of physics that can be in three states depending on the presence of tension, which I consider essential in the essence to the definition of energy in the form of positively charged, negatively charged, and neutral. Moreover, two consecutively identically charged ones cannot follow each other, which, like magnets, leads to repulsion and the disconnection of the chain, the breaking of the string. In a neutrino, fixed physics are closed in space under strong vibration of the strings under tension. An electron is formed from two parts of the strings, each containing 6 physics. After being joined, similar to a Möbius strip, we get what looks like one elongated row of 20 physics. And another important point is the distribution of charge in the electron. After joining, it turns out that the electron can only exhibit negative charge because its discharged part will represent the outer surface, and the charged part will be located in the inner space. Strong vibrations can lead to twisting of space in the form of a spiral and vibrations in a spring-like state. This can lead to the formation of a metastable set from 5 and 6 parts of the string, each containing 6 physics in each part of the string. Before cutting, I want to Emphasize once again that in the number strip only one plane is visible and the other is located in the invisible inner space. We begin by cutting our strips. Each strip corresponds to one string unit and consists of 6 particles. In a neutron we have 5 strips, while in a proton we have 6 strips. We start cutting from one edge, it doesn't matter which, and cut one strip. We finish cutting on the other side of the strip, while performing a schizo motion of 2 circles at 360 degrees each, which amounts to a total rotation of 720 degrees. We cut the second strip in the neutron and proton in the same way. As we can see in the neutron, after cutting the second circle we have a part in the center that is 6 pixels long, which corresponds to a neutrino, and 2 long parts of 20 pixels each in each chain. All parts are intertwined, although they can be considered as separate cycles, each with their own magnetic fields. In the neutron, there are no charged particles, which corresponds to its behavior in nature. In a proton, after cutting the second circle, we were left with a part in the center consisting of two strips in the form of a noble strip, with the red part positive charge on the right. This is actually an electron in reverse, that is, a positron with a positive charge. We found a carrier of positive charge in the form of a positron in the proton, and two neutral chains, just like in a neutron with 20 pieces in each chain. Now let's consider the magnetic models of the neutron and proton. I took circular magnets and connected them in the form of another strip. This was a very interesting experiment. It was surprising how easily the strings of magnets came off according to what we did with the paper. These small circular magnets behave very predictably. Try it yourself, it's interesting. Just like with the paper, I removed two loops and one remained inside. Very predictable behavior in chains of magnets. Weak magnetic fields go sideways but are weakly noticeable by the magnets themselves.
So this goes very deep into us. It goes deep, deep, deep. It goes back, see, to
When I found a way for the magnetic models to reliably connect with each other, it turned out to be quite simple. I took and placed alternately two long loops in the neutron and proton like sheets of paper. With this model we can clearly see the neutral part of the neutron and the positive charge in the form of a positron in the proton. Now if we add an electron we get the model of the deuterium atom. A stable isotope of the hydrogen atom. A structural model made of paper and magnets, these models correspond to the essence of the formation of the basic building blocks of the observable surrounding space. I was interested in how to demonstrate the distortion of space during the formation of Möbius strips and convey the strong and weak interactions of particles in an understandable way. This is a short story about the possibility of a two-dimensional world to exist in the basis of three-dimensional objects.